Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ryan Pitts, and I would like to welcome you all to America's Charities Strategic Volunteering webinar. For those of you who are not familiar with America's Charities, what we do is we bring nonprofit organizations and the business community together to increase social impact and engage employees in giving through workplace giving, volunteer programs, and other corporate philanthropy initiatives. As a result of this work, we've raised over $500 million and for more than 10,000 charities since our founding in 1980. So want to go over the agenda of today's format for this webinar. We're going to do some brief introductions. We're going to go over trends in research. That'll be followed by case studies. Then we're going to get into some solutions. And of course, we have left some available time for Q&A. So what's the reason that we're here today? Volunteerism is one of the most common activities that employers choose to increase positive social impact. The premise of this collaboration sounds fantastic in theory. For the nonprofit, large groups of skills volunteers get to engage. And for the business, it's a chance to give back to the communities they serve, as well as supporting their workforce development and retention of their employees. However, nonprofits definitely feel challenged when it comes to offering meaningful corporate volunteer opportunities. Saying no or redirecting a valued corporate relationship is no small task and is almost taboo in the nonprofit sector. Furthermore, in instances in which corporate partners do engage with nonprofits, they often walk away feeling less than satisfied. Well, today we want to help break that cycle and offer solutions for less than meaningful volunteer engagement. So, prior to joining America's Charities, I've worked for a significant amount of nonprofit sectors with specific experience in leveraging volunteerism to make substantial community, national, and global impact. Additionally, I've witnessed how technology can support the facilitation of great engagement that leads to the future engagement and, most important, satisfaction of all parties involved. With us today, we have two experts that are going to help walk us through how we can move corporate and nonprofit relationships from transactional to strategically focused partnerships. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce you all to Jim Starr. Jim Starr is the COO and Chief Business Development Officer here at America's Charities. As an accomplished leader with more than 25 years of experience and a proven track record in the nonprofit healthcare sectors, Jim has served in national and field executive leadership roles with multi-million-dollar revenue and expense targets. He has led efforts to bring corporations and nonprofits together in meaningful and impactful ways. He also brings a wealth of experience in strategic planning, business development, and partnerships. Prior to joining America's Charities in December 2014, Jim served the mission of the American Red Cross, where his significant career accomplishments include establishing and leading a comprehensive enterprise-wide volunteer engagement strategy, including furthering the engagement of corporate partner volunteers, community partners, and board members. And that's Jim. And next, I'm going to talk about Ryan Scott. Ryan Scott is the CEO and founder of Causecast, a modern software technology platform that makes it easy to engage employees in companies' volunteering and giving efforts. They're the software behind America's Charities, and they serve some of the coolest companies around, including Quicking Loans, The Honest Company, Dish Network, and Sony. So we're going to hop right into it in just a little bit, but I have a few housekeeping items that I want to go over. First of all, you will receive a copy of today's webinar recording and presentation. Secondly, we are live tweeting today using the hashtag Strategic Volunteerism. As you can see on the screen, we encourage you to join our conversation on Twitter using this hashtag. It will be on every slide. And finally, we want this to be interactive dialogue. We want you to leave this webinar with some action items you can implement right away into your organization. So please ask a lot of questions. We welcome you to type your questions to us during the presentation. And as I said in the beginning, we've also reserved some time for Q&A. So with no further ado, I would like to hand over the presentation to Jim Starr.
Ryan, thanks so much, and good afternoon, everybody. Before we jump in, I want to provide a little explanation behind the subtitle of Stop Painting the Same Wall 7 Times. You may have heard this phrase before or something similar to it, but it actually happens. In our Snapshot Research in 2014, where we surveyed nonprofits, we had one of our nonprofit respondents actually say, this is why our homeless shelter was painted 7 times last year when discussing the topic of employee volunteerism. In Snapshot 2015, we at America's Charities surveyed 120 companies that represent more than 600,000 employees in 17 industries. Our research covers many aspects of the role of corporate social responsibility in maximizing employee engagement. Today, we want to discuss some of what we learned as it relates to employee volunteerism and bring some of these facts to life. The big takeaway from our research, as well as from ours and Causecast's collective experience, is that there is much work to be done to increase the power and impact of employee volunteerism. A constant theme is that better alignment between all 3 stakeholders, the company, the nonprofit, and the employee volunteer, is required. But first, let's take a look at some of the trends taking place. While providing employees the opportunity to donate via payroll deduction is the most common component of employee engagement in CSR, volunteering is rapidly growing. The percentage of companies offering volunteer opportunities has grown significantly in the past 2 years. In fact, 9 out of 10 companies surveyed in 2015 are offering volunteering to their employees. The reason for this growth is that the companies are recognizing the value of volunteering to their employees, and just as importantly, 75% feel it is a way to connect their companies with nonprofits in their community. And employees value the support for volunteering from their company. In fact, many want the ability to promote volunteering with their peers. As you can see, companies are doing more than just offering opportunities to volunteer. They're putting real resources and incentives behind it, from paid time off to financial grants. They also expect value in return for their investment. Over 70% are leveraging volunteering to promote team building. What is abundantly clear is that the volunteering expectation of companies of all sizes and their employees are increasing. Companies and employees want to volunteer in ways that build camaraderie, can take place during work hours, and have meaningful impact for those served by nonprofits. But some in the nonprofit sector struggle with how best to meet this expectation. For some, their core work is not naturally structured to accommodate a group for a small window of time, or they don't have the time nor resource to rethink how they could restructure some of their work to accommodate employee volunteer needs. And as Ryan stated earlier, many find saying no to be extremely difficult. There's the fear of losing a financial relationship if they can't deliver a volunteer opportunity. And that is what presents a frequent conundrum we'll dive into in just a bit. But first, let's hear from Ryan Scott about his observations on this topic. Ryan? Ryan, you might be on mute.
I absolutely was. Thank you, Jim. Thanks for having me, folks. Yeah, thank you for having me again. We've observed a lot of the same things at Causecast, where we're helping employees to engage at higher rates than ever before, and we're running into this issue as well. This is just more employees are interested in doing this, and we're able to get them out into the community. And so what we try to do is work with our nonprofit partners to help them scope projects that are going to be even a much higher value to them than repainting walls over and over. And this really comes into play. Nonprofits often don't realize that they have opportunities that employees could participate in using not just their time, but their talent. And this comes into when you say, you think about, what are the technology platforms that you're using in your nonprofit? What are some of the difficulties that you have with things that you didn't think volunteers could help with? If you had a project manager or a software developer or a database developer, would they be able to help you do something with your data that would allow you to really kind of get to the next level, with your technology or with your outreach or your marketing? And oftentimes clients, companies are looking to us to create these opportunities as well. So we help them work in partnership with the nonprofits to scope out projects of this kind. I think that's a a really great way to kind of help take things to the next level and get nonprofits really the capacity building that they need, not just the time. And so, what I would like to do is define as what we see as success. And I think really volunteer engagement is core to the success of the companies that we serve and really the whole world that we live in. And this is why I started Causecast. I wanted to unlock this power. And the power of capitalism is tremendous. It has so much talent and treasure locked up in it. And so what success looks like for me is really a nation and a world of concerned citizens empowered to give back with their time and money, united by the work that they do every day. They spend 8 hours a day at their office at least, and they really want to have this extra purpose applied to the work that they do. So we're really making this vision come alive at Causecast, and I know you are as well. We work with America's Charities. And what we see here, what we're trying to do is we accomplish by partnering collaboratively with the customers, both the nonprofits and the corporations, to create programs that really excite their employees and ignite their communities. And for example, this came to play with one of our clients, Sony, to help them take their program to the next level, sitting side by side and talking to them about what their need was. It wasn't just we need to track volunteers or we need to track giving. Their opportunity was this: they allowed their employees to give Sony PlayStations to sick kids in hospitals, and they needed a way to keep track of it. And they thought that's the extent of really what they needed. But when we sat down with them, we said, look, you do need to keep track of this, but think about it this way. Rather than us creating some sort of custom module that would be, you'd be stuck with this module forever, we said, let's create something that will work for the entire industry. Let's create an in-kind giving module so that any company can have their employees, or you could do it within the company, not through the employees, but allow them to give products in kind to nonprofits. Some companies are using this to engage their employees in ways where they're saying, look, we've got an amazing software technology that we want to make available to nonprofits for free. You as the employees can nominate these nonprofits and we will give them it for free. And then you will work with that nonprofit to help them implement this technology, whatever that happens to be. And this really engages people with and it really helps tie it back to what they're doing in the workplace. They're working all day helping customers work with these pieces of software, but when they do it with a nonprofit, they have a much bigger impact and greater feeling of satisfaction, even with their day-to-day work life, by being able to help organizations and the people that they serve. And so, we did this as well with our client, the Honest Company, who came to us and said, look, we have an amazing corporate store, as you can imagine, and what we'd like to do is help reward. We want to reward the employees for volunteering and giving in the community by helping them amass points for some of the activities that they do. And, we both felt that they didn't necessarily need the points. It wasn't an incentive. It was more of a reward for doing these things in the community, just to show that the company recognizes the good that they're doing. And so they created, in partnership with us, not just a store for Honest products, but a store and point system that we call VIP Rewards that can be used by any of our clients. And they're all starting to take up the cause and put things in their corporate store. It could be anything from corporate swag to a day off or a career dinner with the CEO. And we're finding that the employees really love this. And so that's really been a big part of our philosophy, is getting companies to understand that they're not just advancing their own cause, but advancing the agenda of the entire industry. And that's what a true partnership in this space looks like. And then I think on the nonprofit side, I wanted to mention the Causecast for Nonprofits platform, a portal for nonprofits to go in and put in volunteer opportunities or giving opportunities, get registered with our system for free in order to be seen by the corporations that want to volunteer and give, to get connected to them, and to really start thriving through this new ecosystem that was previously a little bit difficult to get involved with. And so you can reach more donors with a year-round presence inside the companies that are really actively investing dollars in your projects. And so, I think that's a really important part of how we're working with clients and what the kind of things that we're seeing in the marketplace.
Thank you, Ryan. That was great. To bring everything full circle and bring things more to light, I think it's a good opportunity to share a case study with you all. This case study is a true story. Of course, names and identities have been changed to protect those who are part of this scenario, but I think it will help drive the point home of what we're discussing today. This case study overview involves an emergency relief organization and a corporate client known as Smith & Brown. This happened in New Jersey, 2009. The development director of the local office of the National Nonprofit Emergency Relief was called by one of its biggest supporters, a multinational pharmaceutical company named Smith & Brown. Smith & Brown typically donated $100,000 a year locally and more nationally. The community director of Smith & Brown, Nadia, called to say that the group of employees wanted to volunteer together to do some team building and do a little bit of good. Emergency Relief was the first organization that came to mind. Nadia explained to Kathy that they were looking to volunteer the following week for half a day on Thursday. Smith & Brown being a valuable partner, Kathy's immediate response was, "Fantastic. I'll get back to you with details in a couple of days." After hanging up the phone with Nadia, Kathy immediately called her volunteer director, Ryan, and explained it was a great opportunity. Ryan patiently listened, and when Kathy was done, informed her that there weren't any volunteer opportunities next week that would be of value for emergency relief and to fit the parameters that Smith & Brown was looking for. However, Emergency Relief did just begin a partnership with their local fire department to hand out free smoke detectors and would need groups of volunteers in about a couple of months. This was not the answer Kathy was looking for, as Smith & Brown made it very, very clear that they were looking to do something with significant partner impact within the week. So both Kathy and Ryan went to their colleague, Amy, their program director of services. Of course, Amy immediately suggested the same program which Ryan suggested, which was the smoke detector program. After some discussion, Ryan came up with a suggestion that perhaps the group could volunteer by packing comfort kits. What comfort kits are the kits that are handed out to victims whose houses have burned in a house fire. Kathy loved the idea, and so she could bring them into the office and Smith & Brown employees could pack the comfort kits. While comfort kit packing is a group-friendly activity that could be done at a warehouse, Amy had some pertinent information. A couple of things. Emergency Relief had bought comfort kits in bulk for very cheap. The warehouse was full of the comfort kits, so there really was no need to have them come in and pack comfort kits. Someone also would need to be responsible for purchasing the individual items that would be packed into the comfort kit. All three of the Emergency Relief employees valued the relationship with Smith & Brown, so they came up with a plan to make it happen. Kathy would confirm the comfort kit packing event with Nadia and manage the logistical details of getting Smith & Brown on site. Ryan would also organize the event, including having one of their top emergency volunteers, Richard, come in to supervise. Amy would kick off the event with an overview of what Emergency Relief does, while Richard would talk to them about how the relief kits are distributed and the impact that they would have on those who receive them. On that appointed day, Nadia and the group of volunteers from Smith & Brown showed up for the activity. They learned more about Emergency Relief and got a chance to help. Kathy and Nadia did a quick follow-up call a couple of days after. Nadia said the employees enjoyed themselves and were hoping to get a chance to do something more direct service next time. None of those who participated signed up to be a regular volunteer with Emergency Relief, though one did switch their payroll deduction contribution to Emergency Relief as a result of the experience. Everyone went back to their regular routine. So, keeping that case study in mind, we want to walk through about 4 points that would show us what could and should have been done differently to produce a better outcome. Ryan?
Ryan, you may be on mute again.
Seems to be a habit of mine. All right, sorry guys. What really, again, what the first thing is, as I talked about earlier, is to work with trusted partners. And I think it should be easy and natural to say, and I know there's a fear about it, but you say, if you have another solution, you could say, which you should have handy, you say, no, but how about this solution? And trust really can make that conversation natural. And what we often see is that it's really hard for one party to feel that they can say no. They're really excited to do something good, and that's natural. On the nonprofit side, to get some help they badly need, but they end up in this vicious tin cup cycle. That's what we strive to avoid in the way that we bring nonprofits and for-profit companies together. Go to the next one. Success. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but again, I think it comes down to sitting down with some of your trusted advisors, not necessarily volunteers who are coming in to have a fun event someday, but trusted advisors in advance to talk about what are all the problems that you're facing. And I think you'd be very surprised that you can find people to help you with all of those things through the volunteerism pool. Go to the next one.
So, Ryan, thank you. I just want to follow up with the second takeaway in terms of looking at success and how you would describe that. And really, when you look at an opportunity to volunteer, or when a group of employees are looking at an opportunity to volunteer, both the company and the nonprofit really do need to come to an understanding of what's the nature of what they want to get out of it. And that can range anywhere from really being a transactional experience to one where you may come in and help serve food at the homeless shelter for an evening. Or is it going to be something that's much more transformational, that will have much more impact, not only for the individuals being served by the nonprofit, but also for the employee volunteers themselves. So having an understanding of what each would like to get out of their engagement, again, anywhere on that continuum from transactional to transformational is important. So Ryan, let me touch on the technology piece and then have you kind of add a couple of thoughts to that. But one of the things that I do want to say, just from my own background and experience, both in the nonprofit sector and working for a nonprofit and in my role today, we need to find more and more ways to leverage technology. Technology has become a wonderful enabler for a whole variety of things, and it can be an incredible tool for maximizing your volunteer engagement as well. And so if you're using a technology platform as a company, make sure that you're maximizing its abilities. You need to make sure that you're promoting and publicizing your own volunteer projects that you structured to work with nonprofits in your community. Also make sure that you are working with trusted nonprofit partners to make sure that their volunteer opportunities are visible on their platform. As Ryan mentioned, there is a portal within the Causecast platform for nonprofits to go in and make sure that their volunteer opportunities are leveraged there. If you're a member of America's Charities, that's one of the things that can be done through your relationship with America's Charities as well. And many platforms can pull in a wide variety of volunteer opportunities that are searchable by zip code. And in fact, the Causecast platform can be integrated with Volunteer Match to broaden the opportunities for your employees. And as a nonprofit, make sure that you're getting these opportunities out there, particularly with your corporate partners, and making them apprised of ways that their employees can support your mission. In short, be creative in how you can leverage technology.
I think it's really important, and I think to add to that slide, what we're trying to achieve here by using technology is not the replacement of people, of course, but the amplification of what they can do by allowing things to be done at the scale of a corporation or the scale of a need. And that can mean if a company's got 5,000 employees, they probably want them all to volunteer, and typically the only way to have done that in the past was done in a day type opportunities. But I think by leveraging technology, and we've shown this, that you can start to allow the corporation to really serve at their highest ability of contribution through the technology platform.
Great, thank you, Ryan. And the last takeaway that we have for you for today is to follow up. Now, this last takeaway should be self-evident, but what we found is that many times this follow-up just doesn't happen, particularly if the nonprofit's just happy that they were able to pull off the volunteer project. But the follow-up is a perfect opportunity for both the company and the nonprofit to build a dialogue and deepen that trusted relationship, which was takeaway number one that Ryan spoke to. It's also a chance to learn what works, what doesn't work, and how can we make the experience even better for not just the employee volunteer, but for those that have been served by that employee volunteer. So in conclusion, there are probably more takeaways than these four, and we'd love to hear from you. We'd like to hear your questions, your experiences, your learnings. Ryan?
Yeah, thank you.
Ryan Scott, take it away.
Sorry about that. I didn't know which Ryan we were talking about. Yeah, I wanted to add to that, to the final slide there. Following up is really key, and I'm surprised to see how little this takes place as well. One of the things that we've tried to do to address this is Causecast sits in and helps facilitate the relationship between the corporation and the nonprofit. And so, we oftentimes will help companies and the corporation, the nonprofits, come up with good volunteer opportunities, because we know what's going on in the corporation. They'll tell us, some of their needs, like, oh, we want to get our employees out and kind of expanding, their capabilities and growing as leaders. So, or whatever it happens to be, we've got a lot of project managers. Let's not make them, paint a wall. But without the follow-up from the nonprofit, finding out what the result of it was and having a really frank discussion about it, you really just don't have a dialogue, and that will typically spell a rapid end to the relationship. So it's really, really key. And I think a good way to even bridge this, if you're feeling that you may be afraid to talk to them because you might think, oh, maybe they had a bad experience and I just don't want to kind of ask them about that, is to go to them with, if you're at the event and you're taking photos of folks, to go back to either the company directly or through Causecast and give us those photos. The companies and the employees really love to be reminded about what they did days afterwards. We find, too, that they'll typically share these things on social media as well, which is really powerful. And so, using that kind of an entree point to be able to continue this dialogue with the corporation is really, really powerful, and I advise you to take advantage of that.
Thank you, Ryan. So we are going to take this opportunity now. We have our two subject matter experts on the line with us today. Give you all an opportunity to ask them questions. Once again, you can ask them via Twitter using the Strategic Volunteering hashtag, or you can ask them via the chat box. So we have a couple of questions in queue, and we want to start out with a couple. So the first question is, in what ways and how often do you recommend following up? And should the follow-up be with the individual volunteers from the company, or are they through the fundraising volunteer project coordinator?
So Ryan, I'll take a first crack at this one and let you follow up. So the follow-up really depends upon the nature of the volunteer engagement and relationship that you have with the company. If you are structuring a group volunteer engagement where you're bringing in a group of employees to help out at your organization for an afternoon or for a day or whatever that may be, generally that's coordinated between the nonprofit and the company, sometimes the development director at the nonprofit, and then a community relations person typically, or something like that at the company. From the corporate perspective, it's important, well, actually from both perspectives. Those are the people that should probably have the first follow-up to kind of get a sense of how the engagement went, what were some of the strengths for it, what are some opportunities to improve the experience, and such forth. With respect to reaching out to the individual employees, sometimes companies may want to have some level of, not necessarily restriction or control over how their employees are contacted or reached out to by the nonprofit, but I do encourage and believe it can facilitate deeper relationships when a nonprofit has the opportunity to create a lasting experience with an employee. What we found is employees or volunteers sometimes get introduced to causes and to organizations through their workplace and through an opportunity to volunteer, and are looking to actually donate more of their time even outside of the workplace. And so having that engagement and follow-up with the individual volunteer, just simply to thank them, is always a good practice.
I think that's a great point. And I think to make that relationship stronger at the event, there's a big opportunity that I'd like to see organizations taking advantage of, which is when folks come in, really spending some time helping them understand what your cause is about, how you're providing services, and really helping them kind of feel the passion that you have for it. And that passion really helps the folks, who are interested in that really become more interested in your cause, and they will reach out to you as well, which I think is really, really powerful. And then you can have a dialogue with them that could reach to something more skilled volunteering. But once you have that relationship, you're not really going around the company in any way, of course. And I think that's really key. You don't just put them in the room, obviously, and ask them to paint the walls, but talk to them about your cause. And again, I think as Jim alluded to as well, people are much more likely to give to your cause after they've experienced it live and direct.
Excellent. We have another question. We're getting a lot of questions, so that is great. This is kind of a two-pronged. There was a couple of people that asked a question along the same lines. First and foremost, in your opinion, what makes an impactful volunteer experience, and how do we create volunteer experiences that are meaningful to move the mission forward?
I'll take a first stab at that, Jim.
Yeah,
okay.
Go for it,
I think one of the important things, Jim might touch on this as well, because he's a big expert in the space. But I think you talked about it a little bit earlier about actually, when you are put in contact with the beneficiary of the services, there's something really important that happens there. And so, one of the things that we've heard in this space is to kind of, if you've got folks that you're feeding, for example, to kind of, it's not like you want to make everybody's job very efficient. You want to make it actually kind of inefficient if you're doing something like that, so that everybody gets a chance to do something and feel useful, that they're helping this person that they see right in front of them and can talk to. That really builds an incredible bond with your mission. And Jim?
Yeah, Ryan, that's a great point. And in fact, in my experience, that is exactly what creates an impactful experience for volunteers, is the ability to directly serve someone and to see the impact of their gift of time that it has on an individual or a family. Let's take the emergency relief in Smith and Brown case, right? And so in that case, a group of employees came in and volunteered, and they stuck stuff in bags in a warehouse. And while they knew that the benefit of that was going to be good, they didn't get the chance to actually see that. So what could have been done a little bit differently in that particular case study? One, well, if they were able to find a way to make the smoke detector, handing out the free smoke detector program happen, that would have been a little bit better. But another idea could have been to have those same group of volunteers come back in another week or two and actually distribute those relief kits, or have an opportunity to be in a volunteering position where they're actually handing those relief kits out, so that they can see the need firsthand and they can see the impact firsthand.
Yeah, and I think through that, maybe that two-step process, you would find that a lot more folks would be willing to donate after that. Certainly money and obviously their time. But I think where that gets a little bit tricky is with, for example, you've got an environmental organization and you go out and just say you're doing a beach cleanup. And we did this with our company a couple months ago, and I had done it previously, and I always thought that it was one of those things like painting the same room 7 times. But the organization actually gave us a lot of information about the ecosystems that we were trying to protect and the animals that lived there, and why it was really important to do. And that was something that we could think about the whole time that we were, cleaning up this beach, and not just feeling like we were just cleaning up somebody's trash, but we were actually, making an important contribution to the environment and the world that we live in. And that was really helpful. So I recommend, finding ways, if you can't directly put people in contact with the beneficiaries, to really have, good, compelling stories about what you're doing.
Excellent. Another great question, and I think this is a question I often have as well myself. When you're engaging corporate clients, or you're looking to volunteer with a nonprofit organization, there's a skill level that comes with that. Oftentimes, nonprofit organizations don't completely understand how to engage corporate volunteers with a certain skill set on an ongoing basis. So what's some suggestions you two may have around that?
So I'll take a first crack at that. And if we're talking about skills-based volunteering, which I assume what this question is seeking an answer to, that is a growing type of volunteering in terms of its popularity, if you will, but it's also it can be very difficult to manage. And a part of that is the nonprofit having clarity about the exact skill set that they think that they need and where that may reside and why they need it. But more importantly, to get to that answer for a nonprofit is to be able to clearly and definitively describe the problem that you're trying to solve. As opposed to, we believe we need this specific skill set, but having some clarity around the issue or the problem that you have, because you may find that that you may think that you need a social media expert to do some social media stuff for you, but your true problem really is more around branding and marketing. And so the skill set that you actually need is someone that's got brand marketing expertise as opposed to somebody that has social media skills, even though that may be part of it. From the corporate side, it's important that you seek that clarity from the nonprofit that's seeking that skill set. Not necessarily are you looking for the CPA, but what is the particular problem that you're trying to solve? Are you trying to build a better financial forecasting model? Are you trying to build a better system for managing your finances? Because that may then actually dictate what skill set that will best be used to fit that particular need. So it goes back to being very clear about the particular problem that you're trying to solve for, and then between the discussions between the company and their skill-based volunteers and the nonprofit could then determine or arrive at the best solution in terms of a skills-based volunteer. Ryan?
Yeah, and a lot of times this is counterintuitive, but there's organizations and events that can help you scope out these opportunities. And I know Pro Bono Week, if you haven't heard of that, go ahead and look it up, probonoweek.org. It's for everybody to participate into, and one of the things that they do is called Scope-a-thon, which will help you scope these projects so that, first of all, when they end, you can define success. How many people to apply to them and the skill sets that you're looking for. So that's a really useful resource for pro bono.
Moving on to another question that kind of switches gears a bit, but I think it's probably a question that's at the forefront of everyone's mind, is a lot of times the volunteer opportunity is the first introduction that a corporate partner or a corporate relationship may have with that nonprofit. But what you're not seeing, even though they report back that they had enjoyable experiences, that they're not always converted into donors. Or if they don't have the time per se to volunteer with the organization, how do you leverage donation in terms of volunteering opportunities or volunteer time?
Ryan, I'll let you take the first crack at that one.
Sure. Volunteerism isn't right for every organization. So when they're actually when they're donating with you for that day, I think what's really important, and I've seen organizations actually not even cover their costs, which I think is a gigantic mistake. The corporation is willing to pay, so I think it's important that you take advantage of that. And it's not that they're going to more likely to come back because it was cheap. That's not really going to work. So charge an appropriate amount, and all you need to do is be able to justify what that amount is. And it's different for every organization. Some of them need to go out and have shovels for people, or they have to have fruit picking devices, or any number of things. And those things need to be paid for, and the company should be paying them. And I think all opportunities should really have some component of this. Volunteerism is not free; it shouldn't be free.
And Ryan, that's a great point, and it is a practice that we've seen more and more nonprofits begin to explore and adopt. I want to go back to the case study with Emergency Relief and Smith and Brown, and in that particular example, the volunteer opportunity had some costs associated with it in terms of buying the items for those relief kits. If that was going to be the volunteer opportunity, perhaps Emergency Relief could have asked Smith and Brown to pick up the costs of the items that there was going to be used to pack those relief kits. So that's one way to help leverage volunteerism for donations, is having an ask that's attached to the volunteer opportunity. And we've actually seen, like I said, more and more of those things kind of take place. With respect to converting, an employee volunteer into a donor, not all volunteers do become donors. Although volunteering can be the on-ramp for deeper engagement. It's an opportunity for the nonprofit to create an impression and to create a relationship that might lead to a deeper level of engagement, where they become part of your annual fund, or perhaps even become a major donor for you. But it may start with that first volunteering engagement experience. But recognize that a lot of individuals feel that their donation of time is a sufficient donation for them to that particular cause, particularly if it's not one that they have a personal passion around.
It's true. I think you should think of volunteerism as kind of lead generation. People are getting to sample, what you do, and we know they're not all necessarily interested, but your job with them at the event is to show them the passion that you feel and try to engage them in that. And from that, you will find donors. But again, it's not going to be everybody, so don't expect it to be. That's okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Another question we have is, how do you recommend nonprofits work with volunteer centers such as an America's Charities?
So the best way to do that is, for example, with America's Charities, we are a member-based organization. And so our nonprofit services are focused on those charities that are members of America's Charities. And the best way to leverage our services, particularly with the relationships that we have with companies through the Causecast platform, is to make sure that we're aware of the volunteer opportunities you want to make sure are provided to our corporate clients and any corporate client that is using the Causecast platform. And we can help facilitate making sure that happens. And so that's one way to leverage. That's the way to leverage America's Charities, provided you're a member of us. There are other volunteer centers out there. A lot of communities have them. Hands On Network is an organization that helps coordinate volunteer opportunities and things of that nature. It really depends upon the nature and level of their own corporate relationships and how big your particular nonprofit is. If you're a smaller organization, leveraging those community-based volunteer centers, I think is important. And then also making sure that if there's any help that you can provide them, make connections in the community to make sure that those opportunities are getting exposed, all in the interest of partnership and collaboration in the nonprofit sector in that particular community is helpful as well.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's with the volunteer centers. I think it's important for whichever ones you're working with to make yourself be known to them often. Like, oh, we did this event; it's been great. Just be top of mind for them, because when they're talking to corporations, they could be, if you're top of mind, you're going to be mentioned. I think that's really important. So you can't just kind of sit back and expect them to kind of get you listed. It's really about having an active relationship.
Yep.
All right, we have time for about one more question. We have one more question from our chat, and it says, how can companies best respond to volunteer programs that come to them?
That's a great question, and one that we actually frequently hear from our corporate clients as well. And they're generally are presented with opportunities for their employees to volunteer, as well as opportunities for that company to make donations to a particular nonprofit, either directly from the company or through their workplace giving program. The place to start really is with the company's corporate social responsibility objectives. What is it that they want to accomplish through their workplace giving and employee volunteerism programs? And there's a whole range of goals that a individual company could have. It could be to maximize employee satisfaction and engagement in the company. It could be to promote the brand of that organization. It could be simply to address the most significant needs in that particular community. Basically to identify your objectives of what you want to accomplish, and then identify the causes and maybe even specific organizations in your community that align with those particular objectives. That becomes your first screen, if you will, or filter in which to determine what to do with opportunities that are presented to you from nonprofits in your community. If it fits and is aligned with your objectives, and fits in with one of your cause areas or even is one of your specific organizations that you want to partner with or have partnered with, then it becomes a matter of being able to, can we accommodate that with our workload, with our employees? Does the need fit? And if so, boom, you can make it happen. If it doesn't, then perhaps there's a little bit of conversation, discussion, and negotiation to find a way to find an opportunity that does fit. So that would be my initial, I guess, higher level guidance on that. Ryan, what have you seen?
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think a lot of companies have set up, kind of volunteer councils with their employees. And often they have them in our system as what we call community leads, who can actually put opportunities into the system or directly into campaigns. But I think it's important not just to have them do that role, but to sit down together, in person as much as possible and discuss these, discuss the opportunities, of course, with representatives from HR, which is usually who's running the system. So we can talk about not just, hey, we want to get everybody out and have a good time, this is good team bonding, but could you also be helping develop your skills through this somehow? And then I think the second part of that is talking to more than one organization and getting deeper with them. So the corporation can find out, like, look, really, okay, I know you have this volunteer opportunity, but what are some of your internal challenges? And you could send a small team to actually go out and talk and look at their systems and how they do things. Is there ways to help take them to the next level? And you can learn a lot from that. And that really is a volunteer opportunity as well. Those are some good ways.
Great, thank you.
All right, well, I told a little bit of a story. We have a question that's too good not to be answered, so we're going to go ahead and address it. So this will be our final question. We have a steady stream of corporate volunteers who come back year after year, but we have not yet been able to convert any of them to donors. Any tips?
So that's a great question. And one a little bit more information might be insightful in helping address or craft an answer for you. But the questions that I would ask that may help lead you to the solution is, what type of outreach do you do with these individuals post-volunteering? Do you have an opportunity to send them a thank you? Are they part of your communication distribution list? Not to bombard them with a lot of direct mail, but do you have a special outreach that you do with all of your corporate employee volunteers? Maybe set up a special distribution list where you share stories about the impact of their work, that you can keep them apprised and up to date of some of the things that your organization is doing, that you could perhaps communicate additional volunteer opportunities for them that were similar to the ones that they had, so they know what to expect, and see if they may be interested in volunteering outside of the workplace. Giving them the opportunity to actually make a financial contribution to you. One of the things that I see time and time again is the main reason why people actually don't donate is because they didn't get asked. And so have you found a respectful and professional way to ask your corporate volunteers to make a financial contribution to you? Have you looked at doing a special campaign for them that speaks to their unique or their special way of engaging with you? So I would look at all of those types of things as a way to help deepen in that connection that you have with those volunteers. number one, just making sure that you've got that communication mechanism in place.
You hit on some really great things there. I think asking being one of the most important ones, and asking for a lot of folks is the hardest thing to do, especially because you feel like, oh, well, they're already doing something for me. I can't ask them to do more. Well, you really can, and the reason you have to is because the 50% of people give simply because of that reason, because they were asked to. And I think what you're touching on here is with providing stories back to the company and having a dedicated list goes to what I call the virtuous cycle of employee giving. And the thing that was kind of missing from that before was the ability to be able to tell stories to everybody, because you had to send postal mail out to everyone. But now it's nearly free by being able to do it through email. And so one of the things that was important for us in kind of getting all the stories back from the organizations was at first, until the organizations kind of do it on their own, we would help facilitate that, because it was really important for the corporation too. They really did want to get these stories. And whether those are photos or videos or stories from in the field, the work that you're doing, and being able to provide that back to the employees really helps validate why they did it, shows the value of it over time, shows the progress that's being made, which is really, really important. People tend to, this is a term from venture capital, but it applies to nonprofits as well. It's that people don't invest or donate, would be the term, but they don't do it a lot for dots. They do it for lines. So when they see progress, it really gets people excited. And that's, I think, that one opportunity where people are coming out and volunteering is just a dot on a chart. You really want to show them a line. And I think communication is really key. And so this is why, too, in our system, with donors and volunteers, unless the individual has said that they don't wish to be contacted and have done it anonymously, we provide that information to the organization so that they can do that follow-up. And it's really key. So at the very least, with the volunteer opportunity that you do through our system, you're going to be getting some email addresses that you could use to then start to nurture those folks.
And Ryan, just one more follow-up point to that, and then I'll turn it back to the other Ryan. I want to follow up on Ryan's point about leveraging technology. There's a couple things that you can ask of your corporate employee volunteers. One is to ask them to share their experience on their employee engagement workplace giving platform, assuming that the company is using one of those. Most of these platforms allow employees to share their stories. The Causecast platform is a great example that helps facilitate that, even promotes sharing it through social media as well. So you can ask your volunteers just to help promote their experience simply by talking about it and leveraging the technology that's already in place that enables that to happen. Related to that, there's no harm in also asking them to continue their support for your nonprofit by asking them to designate them as their workplace giving recipient, and going back and making a payroll deduction contribution to your organization through the workplace giving platform like Causecast. The average annual gift that's made through workplace giving is around $700 or more, which is generally larger than your average annual fund gift. It's also at a cost that's less than your annual fund gift to actually get that generated. So ask your corporate volunteers to continue their support by pledging to your organization on their workplace giving platform.
Yeah, you hit on some great things again. Payroll, what I understand from your snapshot from some of your talented folks over there, is that people will give about 3 times as much through payroll as they do from single donations. Kind of set it and forget it. But then also you've got the opportunity for the company to match it, which is huge as well. And some companies, I'm going to talk a minute about social media and talk about our client Pearson Publishing, but they as well. Not only did they use social media, but with matching, we did a recent campaign with them around the sustainability goals for the UN, and they matched 4 to 1. So it was tremendous. People were donating $100 and the organization was getting $500 for it. So it was tremendous. to talk about social media for a second, they were one of our first clients to use the new social media tools that we introduced early this year. And I suspected that it was going to be powerful, but I just didn't realize how powerful it was going to be. In a campaign that had about 1,000 donors, it had 900 of them send things out to social media. So I'm not sure how else you would generate 900 social media posts for a corporation and a nonprofit, but just doing it through the power of giving and volunteerism. That's what they did. 90% of their folks went to social media. That generates a lot of attention. So, I think from a nonprofit perspective, it's asking for these things. The volunteer coordinators, the people at the company, they do know about these things, but asking is really the key. And then inside the corporation, leverage all the tools at your disposal. It's really, really powerful.
Wonderful, Ryan. Great, pretty bow on the end of this presentation. Want to definitely thank you, Ryan, from Causecast and Jim from America's Charities. We truly appreciate you sharing your time today and your expertise. Just a quick reminder, I want to thank everyone for joining today. You were a very engaging group, wonderful, brilliant questions. We'll be sharing more details about our next webinar very, very soon. Make sure you subscribe to our newsletter at www.charities.org. And also you can find out when our next webinar will be by visiting www.charities.org/webinars. Also, you all will be receiving the recording of this presentation, as well as you will be receiving a complimentary strategic volunteerism white paper that will be distributed to you shortly after today's call. So with that being said, that's all we have for today. And I just want to thank everyone once again, and you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.